Hi, I just found a link at A Voice for Men. Thank you again, A Voice for Men. But another tragedy, another father taking his life. He was just at the end of his rope, just like many other fathers experience, and some of them just can't take it anymore and they commit suicide. It's a horrible thing. I'll just name some names recently. This poor gentleman, apparently he did it in the year 2000. It doesn't make it any less tragic in the year 2014 because men are still doing it daily, killing themselves because of an insensitive family court system and government. Okay, this is Darren White. Okay, recently Chris Mackney killed himself. Thomas Ball, of course, we know all about. Set himself afire in front of the family court building. He just didn't. He was at the end of his rope. And Earl Silverman, of course, who was trying to run a home for men, abused men, and the government wouldn't give him any money, and he ended up having to close it, and he was heartbroken. He killed himself. But I'm going to read. Oh, and I also want to blame so-called journalists who make light of suicide, because they made light of the International Conference on Men's Issues, which this is one of our top issues, that men are killing themselves because they're court ordered to pay astronomical sums of money, and these judges don't seem to be able to do math. They're forced to come up with money that they don't have, in excess of what they earn. You think they could do math, but no. And you know the math that they're adding up are men that are killing themselves. And you know who wins in that case? Huh? Does the ex-wife win? Did the children win? Huh? Did the courts win? And maybe the courts do win. But two so-called journalists like Michael Kimmel and Bucky Turco and Jessica Roy and David Futrell and Matt Binder and Arthur Goldwag and Michael Laxer and Mark Potok, Adam Sewer. You make light of these poor men, but I'm just going to read, okay? Now, these people who've written these articles are actual journalists. They've actually researched the issue, and they've written down the facts. This is from the Socratic Method by Clayton Craddock from the SocraticMethod.com. So let me just read this link to this article that I saw in A Voice for Men. The title is Father's Suicide Becomes Rallying Cry for Fairness in Court. This was just published, but this story tells a tale of a man who killed himself in the year 2000. Printed by Clayton Craddock, and he's excerpting an article from Glenn Sachs. 35 years ago today, Lillian White gave birth to her youngest son. Yesterday, she knelt down and kissed his coffin at his gravesite. Darren White committed suicide 2 weeks ago in Prince George, BC, after a judge ordered him to pay his estranged wife twice his take-home pay in child support and alimony each month. In death, he has become a poignant symbol of family courts gone awry, of a divorce system run by people with closed minds, hard hearts, and deaf ears. Across the country last evening, activists held candlelight vigils in memory of men such as Darren. During his funeral mass, Father Leo Fernandez of St. Augustine's Roman Catholic Church urged Darren's friends to continue the struggle to which he succumbed. Like those who completed Puccini's last opera after his death, Father Fernandez said people close to Darren should ask themselves, what are you going to do about it? Hopefully there is more. It is up to you, his friends, to accomplish what he was unable to do. If his dream was to challenge the scales of justice in our country, then so be it. Do it for his sake. Darren wasn't a complicated man. He liked taking nature walks and enjoyed cycling. He read books about the outdoors and loved animals. He was a certified locomotive engineer who earned his living driving trains, first for Canadian National, then the British Columbia Railway. When his marriage fell apart in January, Darren found himself in a situation shared by many men. While he had worked long hours during what society told him a father was supposed to do, bringing home the bacon, his devotion became a strike against him. In a country that still treats children as prizes to be won in divorce rather than as human beings entitled to close contact with both of their parents, the fact that Darren has not spent as much time with his children as his homemaker wife was deemed sufficient reason to award her sole custody. As an aside, see, once again, men punished for working hard. Okay, back to Glenn Sachs's article. Suddenly alone, compelled to leave his home with less than 48 hours notice, expected to come up with rent money, as well as lawyers' retainers, and missing shifts at work due to court dates, Darren found himself criticized for not paying his estranged wife, who, unlike him, was eligible for social assistance, child support during this chaotic period. Perhaps during these weeks, it began to dawn on Darren how vulnerable his relationships with his children, aged 5, 9, and 10, had now become. His oldest child, age 14, from a previous relationship, lives with her mother in Saskatchewan. Perhaps other divorced dads told Darren of former wives brainwashing their kids against them, frustrating court-ordered child access while suffering no legal consequences, and behaving as though the kids should call every new boyfriend dad. All divorced mothers don't behave this way, of course, but enough do to make such fears reasonable. Yet society provides no services to help loving, reasonable, responsible, traumatized dads deal with such stresses. Researchers have known for decades that divorce is much harder on men than it is on women. We know that men who undergo marital breakdown experience significantly higher rates of suicide, mental illness, physical health problems, and accidents than do women. Yet we remain indifferent to their anguish. You know, there is more to this article, but apparently the link doesn't bring me to the article. It has been removed. I wonder if there may be a legal problem with the Darren White stuff. So I did a quick search of him and other stories, related stories, and man, there's a lot of them. Okay? I'm going to just keep reading. Family blames justice system for pushing man to suicide. Darren White's brother-in-law cites court-ordered support payments that far exceeded his income. This is from the Vancouver Sun by Jeff Lee. This appears to be the same horrible story of Darren White. Okay. The family of a Prince George man who committed suicide is blaming the judicial system for his death. Family members say Darren White hanged himself because he couldn't stand the pressures placed on him by what they characterize as an unsympathetic court that systematically stripped him of his family responsibilities and saddled him with unbearable costs. The court system didn't listen to him. It failed him. He gave up, and no one wins. Not the kids, not now, who don't have a father, not the ex-wife, not the court, White's brother-in-law, Murray Empey, said Wednesday. The court system bullied him to his death. On March 1st, BC Supreme Court Master Doug Baker ruled that White, who was on temporary stress leave from his job as a BC rail locomotive engineer, was capable of paying $2,071 in spousal and child support for his ex-wife and 3 children, even though White was on disability at the time and was only getting $950 per month. In addition, Baker disregarded another $439 per month White said he was paying to support a 14-year-old daughter from a previous union. Here, again, is one of my asides. No, these judges can't do the freaking math. Okay? Back to Jeff Lee's article. The amounts would have eaten up almost all of White's after-tax income, even had he been working and not on disability, Empey said. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to see that the numbers didn't add up, but that didn't seem to matter to the judge. How was it that he could make an order like that when the money wasn't there in the first place? But it was more than just the money that drove White over the edge. MP said in an interview shortly before he and White's father, Les, returned to Brandon, Manitoba to bury White. White was so traumatized by the court system that he no longer felt he had any rights. Even though he loved his children and wanted to be a part of their lives, MP said. I think Darren was in a state of mind where he was beat up by the courts and he just gave up. He said, we talked to Darren every day, sometimes twice a day from Brandon, and no one ever thought he would do this. What really forced him was the fact he was fighting for visitation rights, fighting for any kind of rights, and trying to be a good father and not being allowed to do that. White's bitter court battles were marked by charges of spousal assault, restraining orders against both him and his ex-wife, and a restriction on his visitation rights. In a court document in which White sought a variance on a restraining order, he wrote about the importance he placed on his role as a father. My children need their dad, and I need them, he wrote. I cannot tell my children I love them, even though I am sure they know it. They need to hear this as often as possible, he wrote in the document dated last month. In his reasons, Baker acknowledged White was under stress, in part because he was involved in several court actions involving his ex-wife. One of those involved an allegation of spousal abuse. But he said he didn't believe White was supporting his first child, and he felt the man could go back to his job as a locomotive engineer within weeks. Lloyd McKenzie, a former BC Supreme Court judge who speaks on behalf of the court, said the White case is no different than any of the thousands that go through the courts. In this case, the outcome of a marital breakup, which at the best of times is emotional, was doubly tragic, he said. There is nothing unusual about this judgment, McKenzie said. These disputes go on every day, but you don't have this kind of human antagonism or emotion in any other kind of case. This man was obviously under a very great deal of stress. McKenzie said the judge applied standardized guidelines for spousal and child support. He said Baker would not give interviews to the media. A judge talks to the world through his reasons of judgment. Master Baker doesn't have any personal interest, and he didn't have anything else against the man. White's death last week, has become a rallying point for family rights groups who say the 34-year-old couldn't withstand the stress of a family court system that chews people up. I would say chews men up. That's my comment. The Prince George Parent-Child Advocacy Coalition is asking for a public inquiry into Baker's ruling and says White is only one example of a family maintenance support system gone awry. On Wednesday, they held a protest outside the courthouse in Prince George. This is a hell of a problem across the country, told Todd Eckert, an advocate with the PGPCA, who represented White in court before Baker. There were a number of contributing factors to this. But in the end, it came down to Darren believing the system had failed him, and it did. Eckert said White is an example of why Federal Justice Minister Anne McClellan needs to rewrite family support laws to reflect a growing demand for joint parenting. He said the minister is sitting on a report that advocates rewriting legislation adopted 3 years ago that selectively favors custodial spouses. White's 11-year marriage dissolved in January. His ex-wife, Madeline, who was also trained as a locomotive engineer, was awarded custody of 3 children, aged 10, 9, and 5, and was given the matrimonial house. White had restricted visitation rights. He had been accused of spousal assault, a charge MP said his brother-in-law denied. On March 12th, family members called the police hours after he failed to show up for a scheduled visit with the children. Oh, now you're noticing, huh? He said there was no indication. Police later found a personal note to his father and children, and on March 17th discovered his body behind the home of a friend he had been staying with. Darren Lindsay, Madeline White's lawyer, said his client was in very poor shape over her ex-husband's suicide. He said there was no indication White was suicidal. The children have been told of their father's death. Eckert said he understood White was extremely distressed because he was separated from his children. Lindsay said his client was on welfare when she applied to the court for support. She and the children had left the matrimonial home and didn't have any money, he said. Prince George coroner Suzanne Harris said she will be conducting an inquiry into White's death. Here's some more from FathersForLife.org. Darren White, murdered by the system. I have just received the most unpleasant news that Darren White of Prince George, BC, Canada, has been found near UNBC. Apparently he killed himself. Darren White had been reported as a missing person this week, and he had been under extreme pressure since Judge Master Baker of the BC Supreme Court judged that he must pay $2,000 per month support. His income was $2,200. My heart is heavy as I'm writing this. This is from Dennis Wilshire. According to Todd Eckert, father's advocate who had been involved with helping Darren White, Darren couldn't afford a lawyer. The total amount of alimony support had been ordered to pay was $2,017 per month. Just a few days ago, I received a call from Todd Eckert. He was concerned that Darren White, a father of 3 children, who was being destroyed by his ex and the judicial system, had disappeared and was feared to have done away with himself. What worried Todd was that Darren White had written his will and had bought a lottery ticket with other people in the group home where he resided after he had been forced from his home. Darren White had scratched out his name on the lottery ticket and had written in the name of his brother. 3 days ago, a public service announcement to draw people's attention to the disappearance of the man was broadcast during the evening news. As you know, from Dennis Wilshire's message, Darren White has been found dead. Darren White was facing 3 separate domestic violence allegations, all apparently false. Had to appear in court in 8 different court hearings during the space of last week. Was ordered to pay $2,070 in child support. Half of that is alimony to his ex-wife who had left him, took the children and denied him child visitation, and was given 2 days to vacate his home. He had nothing left to live on. Darren was on a disability allowance, and the judge ordered that Darren had the obligation to pay $438 a month in child support for the child of his first family. In addition, why should he have bothered to keep on living? How was he supposed to manage? Do you realize that he didn't even qualify for welfare? But while he was still alive, he was a deadbeat dad, wasn't he? Dead, bolted, and beaten dead by the enormous anti-male bias in our courts, in the bureaucracy, and in our society is a more fitting description. And Darren White is only one in millions. When you cut a man's skin, he bleeds too. But when you destroy him and rob him of everything he lived for, his spirit dies. In the case of Darren White, a father and a man died, murdered by the system. Darren White became a victim of the planned destruction of our families. His children pay the price. The following was a letter written by Darren White's daughter Ashley. I don't know what her age is, but I'm writing it on behalf of Darren Bruce White. I'm the oldest of his 4 children. My name is Ashley A.D. Barnett White. I am angry at the justice system and Maddie White, my stepmother. No one would listen to my father. No one would give him a chance to speak. In this century, everyone hears the woman and not the man. This is a very sexist matter that needs to be dealt with. My dad was an abused husband and was abused by his wife and the justice system. My dad was a very good father and wanted the best for all of his children. His children at this time are 14, 10, 9, and 5. All of his children were his life. He wanted everything he could possibly give to his children, and what he couldn't. The most important thing he gave his children were his love and being there for them. He loved all of his kids equally and with all his heart. He was a kind man who fought a good fight, but no matter what he did or said, he could never win with this system. Things need to change for all fathers, and I would add children, going through this same thing. We need to help. Too many kids go without a father because of this. Too many kids are hurt. This from a 14-year-old. My dad would never hurt anyone. He was strong, caring, and tried to help as much as he could. Now Maddie is trying to keep away from the people that really loved him, were his born and raised, and were his family lives. I know in my heart this is wrong, and somebody has to do something. My grandfather and my uncle are out in Prince George at this very time fighting for him and for his rights. Please help bring my daddy home where he belongs and where he would like to be. I know deep down in my heart if you help, we will win. And help every other father out there without his rights. I may be 14, but I know where he belongs, and so do you. Please bring my daddy home. Sincerely with thought, Ashley A.D. Barnett White. Darren's nemesis Maddie eventually released the body of the man she hounded to death and wasted with the help of the legal system, a man who had been a good father to his children. It's really very moving. Sorry to say that poor man killed himself. We should really help. I'm going to leave some links to some information on this video. We got to stop this. Got to help fathers and children stop this craziness. Thank you.